So can a small Canadian company make a wave in the US PSA IPSC game with the FTP Optics Alpha 3? If you stick around, we'll find out. Are you ready? Stand by. So in early 2020, there are about 3 electronic sights that are prized for practical shooting. They are the Trijicon SRO, the Romeo 3 Max, and the Romeo 3 XL. While these dots are absolutely fantastic and wonderful in their own right, their downside is they come with a pretty hefty price tag. The SRO is going to tip the scales at about $490 to $495, and the Romeo 3 offerings are about $600. So what's interesting is a gentleman out of Canada approached the same factory that the Romeo 3s are made in Japan, and spec'd out his own optics to import. And so he's selling them direct through his website. So the FTP Optics Alpha 3 is roughly the same size and roughly the same window size as the Romeo 3 optics, but they only cost about $370 US. And if you stick around to the end of the video or check out the description, there is a discount code that can save you some money off of that. But to make things more interesting, this gentleman who imported it picked all of the features that a practical shooter would want and kind of left a lot of the Timmy stuff for door kickers by the wayside. So we'll get into that as we kind of walk through the features. So this optic, the first question anyone asks on an optic used for gaming is, how big is the glass? Well, if you've held a Glock pistol, the width of the glass is approximately the width of a Glock slide for a full-size 9mm gun, and the height is a little bit taller than a Delta Point Pro if you've used one of those. When held side by side with my SRO, it's a very comparable viewing area. It's a little bit skinnier than the Romeo 3 Max, and it's a lot skinnier than the Romeo 3 XL, which dwarfs pretty much everything. But more importantly, the quality of the glass is exceptional. It kind of tints the paper sort of a blue-green color, but it's not really distracting. It's kind of less extreme than the Trijicon, but it is gorgeous. It doesn't distort around the edges, and it just has a very quality feel when you're looking through it. Like when you put on really good sunglasses and you're like, wow, these are really nice lenses. It's kind of like that looking through the glass. It is a very good piece of glass. And one of the more interesting features is the optic is super bright. So the SRO was one of the brighter optics. The Romeo 3s are very bright optics. They're brighter than the Delta Point Pro. And the Alpha 3 is right there with them. This dot will get very, very bright to the point where you have to actually turn it down. You won't use it on a bright sunny day at full setting like you would on most other dots. You can actually dial it back a couple clicks and get a very usable dot. And because the emitters are only offered in the 6 MOA and 8 MOA reticles, you have an easy time seeing those dots show up. Now, if you're new to the dot game and you're reading a lot of stuff on the internet about the superiority of 1 or 3 MOA dots or like a 2, the bigger ones are just better. The 6 and 8 MOAs are roughly mid-sized dots. They're not going to twitch as much as the finer ones are, and more importantly, when you're shooting in a practical shooting context, the gun is not going to stop moving enough to get more accuracy out of a smaller dot. The grosser sight picture offered by the 6 or 8 MOA offerings is going to be faster to acquire, easier to track. It's going to show itself as being a bad sight picture a bit more obviously than the other ones, and you're going to be less prone to letting the dot try and settle out on the target. So it is really well suited at either of those sizes for practical shooting. Now, the lowest setting on the dot brightness is going to still be usable. Now, unlike its competition where there are night vision settings that are totally worthless, the lowest setting on the Alpha 3 is actually usable. When I zeroed the gun on the range, I used the least amount of brightness I could muster from the dot, and it was still a little bit too much from what I prefer. I like a really dim dot when I'm zeroing, and the brightness was usable on the day I brought it to the range. Like, it was a little faint, but it was right there where you would want it to be. And that brightness is adjusted by the buttons on the left side of the optic. They are large and oversized. They have nice raised tactile pads that you can feel when you're pressing up and down. And here's another feature for the practical shooter is the optic turns on with a momentary press of any of the buttons and the optic is on. Now, there is a go to sleep function. If the gun does not move for 3 minutes, it will put itself to sleep, and it has a MOTAC to wake itself back up if you pick it back up again. Or if you want to turn it off, you just hold the down button for about 5 seconds and the dot goes off. And to that point, they provide an optics cover that actually fits over the optic. Because I use co-witness sights, it's not going to sit all the way down, but this is crucial for the practical shooter, and it's wonderful that they had the foresight to provide this with the optic. Now, as far as the windage and elevation adjustment, it's just like any other electronic sight where the elevation is on the top of the body and the windage is on the right side of the body. And here's probably my biggest gripe with the optic is it takes a hex key to actually adjust it. So you will need to keep a hex key in your range bag, but it's not the end of the world since most people with range bags keep hex keys in them. So it'd be better in my mind if it had a larger dial with an oversized flathead slot that you could use a case rim to adjust. But even still, I'm giving it a pass for that because when you do make adjustments, it has the most tactile and audible click I've ever felt when zeroing an optic. So it's very easy to zero to know how much adjustment you are dialing in, but that extra strong click was one of the features requested by the gentleman who set this optic up. It's not going to lose zero, and it doesn't have lock screws or anything like some of the other sights do. So it hasn't lost zero for me. I've only had it for just north of 1,000 rounds on my practice gun because the weather's been crummy since I got this thing mounted, but it's held up just fine. Now, the battery that the optic uses is a CR2032, which is good. It is the most common battery, so if you run out or don't have them in your range bag, you'll be likely to be able to bum one on the range, and it is accessible through a drawer on the side of the optic that does take like a car key or potentially a pocket knife to get it to come out, but it is very easy to change the battery. The battery life is only going to be about 320 hours, which would be a deal breaker for like a concealed carry optic, but that's not what this is. 320 hours is a bunch of matches. That's a lot of 8-hour days on the range if you get honest with how much time that represents. In practice and dry fire, you're likely not going to be using it for more than 30 to 2 hours, 30 minutes to 2 hours. So if you get honest about it, while more battery life would be better, it is an acceptable amount of battery life for the given mission of the optic. Now, as far as the body size is concerned, it is thicker and it is longer than most other of the MRDS type sights. The Delta Point Pro is much shorter front to back when you view it kind of side by side. And similarly, if you hold it next to like an SRO or even the Romeo 3, the bodies are a comparable length. This is about the length of a Seymour RTS2. It's just slightly longer. Another downside is they don't offer mounting plates directly from them to buy, so you have to get like a Seymour RTS2 adapter plate, which there's no shortage of those on the internet. This is actually one from Seymour that I'm using to mount onto my Glock pistol. But if you're shooting like an X5 or something like that, I think Springer Precision makes a Romeo 3 or a Seymour mounting plate that should probably work with this optic. So the optic has been really solid for me. As I mentioned, I only got just north of about 1,000 rounds on it thanks to the winter time so far, but I haven't had any issues with it. The housing feels pretty robust, although I haven't banged it on fence post. I did accidentally have my gun drop out of my holster at the range one day when it wasn't quite clicked in, and the optic survived it with no issue. However, that's far from a shoulder height drop test. I do really like how the optic presents. There's something about being a slide width optic and being very tall that makes the dot very easy to follow and very easy to find and present. Even though I lose my co-witness sights, if I had a shorter mounting plate, I think these Delta Point Pro sights could co-witness on this, and that would be fantastic. It comes with an optic cover, which is a huge feature, and all dots used in competition should have an optic cover, so it is fantastic that they provided one. Overall, the quality just feels really good. It feels like a very expensive piece of kit, despite being pretty reasonably priced as far as these kinds of things go. And to that point, I went from definitely getting another SRO, this is my backup gun that I have this on here, my practice gun, to I'm happy with this dot being mounted on it. Even though I lose my co-witness sights, it does what I need it to do brilliantly, and the glass is so, I really can't overstate how nice the glass is to look through and just how great that dot is. It is a very crisp and bright dot. It does exceptionally well in the Texas sun. As far as the Delta Point Pro, yes, I much prefer this to a Delta Point Pro. While the Delta Point Pro has better features perhaps for a concealed carry type of gun, for a gun that is going to be used for practical shooting, I think this is a significantly better choice. And then I was able to get you guys a discount code. It is HUMBLE, HUMBLE, used at checkout, and that will save you, I believe, $15. So it takes an already very well situated optic. It makes it even more reasonable. So if you made it this far, sound off in the comments. Would you consider an optic on your gaming gun from an unknown brand if it did have all of the things that you want in a gaming optic? How much does that brand name matter to you? Would you consider saving money on something like this, or would you have to have the Trijicon or the Sig Electro Optic? Sound off, let me know in the comments. I'm curious to know what you think. And if you did make it this far, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a thing. Check out the links in the description. You can even get these shirts now if that's something of interest to you. And I got a bunch of other crap that you can do to help support me, and some affiliate links for some stuff on Amazon that I find fascinating. I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Take care, guys.